that there are people continuing to join this webinar, how AI makes 5G networks more intelligent and efficient. So I'm just going to wait a few more minutes, another minute or so, just to let more people join. My name is Joe Barrett. I'm the president of the Global Mobile Suppliers Association. We represent the mobile infrastructure suppliers globally. So again, a few more people still joining. So thank you for everybody for joining. Let me take you through the agenda of today's topics. So we'll introduce the moderator, myself, as you've heard, and then the panelists. We have an esteemed panelist today. And there will be some opening statements and the presentations from those panelists. And then we'll have the opportunity to have a panel discussion and Q&As from the audience. So we do encourage you to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask questions, and we will come to those after the panel discussions and the presentations. And then we'll have some closing comments at the very end. So please, as we said, submit your questions through the Q&A chat window at any time during the discussion. We may pull some of those up during at the end of each presentation if they are relevant, or we'll come to them at the end of the session, during the Q&As. So without further ado, let us go forward. So the promise of 5G can be extended with AI, with artificial intelligence. Automation is key. It's a key driver for efficiency and operational cost savings. Managing this huge amount of data in the mobile network is growing and is a challenge for all operators and all vendors. And 5G and AI will therefore become the foundation of the consumer mobile experience over the next 10 years as we develop a seamless AI-driven automated network. So that is a reason for the discussion today. And again, around this topic, your questions are encouraged. So speakers, as I've already introduced myself, I'm the moderator. I'm Joe Barrett, president of the Global Mobile Suppliers Association. We have Mohammed Badkour from Huawei, Neil Sahota from Global AI Initiatives at Huawei, and Will Townsend, a senior analyst. Sorry, Neil from who will introduce himself, who's an officer of Global AI Initiatives. So I will start with Mohammed. Please, could you give a short introduction? But also, I would ask you to think about how the current situation that we are living in has created interesting issues for yourself personally. And if you could also respond to that as well. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Joe. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the webinar. And thank you so much for joining. And we hope that this 60 minutes will provide you a lot of insights and benefits. My name is Mohammed, and I belong to the Wireless Networks and Cloud Core Network Marketing and Solution Sales Department for Global Operation. I'm based out of Shenzhen, China. However, as you see, because of this pandemic, I'm giving this webinar from home in Dallas. So mentioning that, I hope that everyone is healthy and safe out there. My responsibility is really in marketing the technology and the benefit of the technology to societies, industries, and economies, specifically 5G and also universal inclusive connectivity for all unconnected society. So that's what I do. Regarding your question, Joe, about how this pandemic affected myself, I think I'm not different of anybody else. I wanted to mention a couple of things. The first one is this, what I call COVID beard. So that's what really That's the new thing. I didn't have a beard before, and that's why we all having this COVID beard, I guess. And the second thing is related to business. I guess I used to travel 85% of the time, and right now it's 0% of the time. And I found out that I have about 25% more time, which allows me basically to do great things like cooking, for example. So cooking has been really doing well for me. And that's all about how this pandemic has affected all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Mohammed. Neil, would you like to introduce yourself, please, and also answer the same question?
Sure. Thanks, Joe. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day, and thank you for being here. So my name is Neil Sahota. So I'm an advisor to the United Nations, Chief Innovation Officer with the University of California System and other AI initiatives, including AI for Global Good. I've been in the space for a long time, cutting my teeth by being part of the original IBM Watson team. These days, I help people figure out how to tap into the capabilities for business and social impact use. And I think that COVID-19, while has been not made a great 2020 for everyone, I do find it's a great accelerator, and it's really allowing us to tap into innovation and find new solutions, especially with 5G and AI. And my own experience is very similar to Mohammed, that I used to actually travel quite a bit. Whole world is my office, and being at home has actually given me more time to do a couple of things I actually really enjoy, which is actually cooking and do like more exploration around recipes, as well as I've become quite the handyman at fixing things at home.
That's Neil.
That's great. Thank you, Neil. Will, would you like to introduce yourself and answer the question, please?
Sure, Joe. Yeah, thanks for having me on. So my name is Will Townsend. I manage the networking infrastructure practice at More Insights and Strategy. I've been doing that for quite some time, bring 30 years of practical experience to that job, and really enjoy it. Like Mohammed and like Neil, as an analyst, I actually, I think, I was on an airplane 3.5 weeks every month for the last several years. Yeah, because my focus is global. And so that's been a real adjustment for myself and for my girlfriend. But like the other panelists, I've picked up a hobby that I've enjoyed for many years. I'm an avid road cyclist, and put on a few pounds with all the world travels over the last several years. And so actually getting back on the bike has been great. And I think, like the other panelists mentioned, it also, when you're not on a plane, it gives you an incredible, amount of time to be more productive as well. So yeah, those are my silver linings with respect to COVID-19.
That's great. Thank you. Just for myself, I will say that, the past 4 months I've started growing vegetables. So I'm now an avid vegetable grower. So that's the key thing for me. That's happened over the past few months. Okay, so just as we move forward, I just wanted to have just one quick slide about GSA, because we are producing lots of reports around 5G and also 4G around networks and devices, etc., and chips, etc. Most of our reports are free, so please go there if you want to get those downloaded. But as an example, we now have announced 92 5G commercial networks globally in 38 countries. And there are 140 5G devices commercially available. So those are the latest stats that we produced this week. So again, we're seeing the growth of 5G happening more and more, and the whole ecosystem starting to accelerate. So I think first up is Mohammed. So please, the floor is yours for the next 10 minutes.
Good. Thanks, Joe, and thanks, everybody. All right. So when we talk about 5G and AI, I just put that kind of title. I'm not sure whether it will resonate with all of you or not. I believe that 5G and AI are just they are just two faces of one gold coin. It is just one valuable, disruptive coin that will do miracles for the whole world. And I was just talking to also some of our customers, and some of them, he just gave me a statement. He said, I do not think that any business case or any 5G use case that does not have AI in there. So basically, you can think about 5G and AI like really going, not really hand in hand, but going side by side to really disrupt uh, the whole economy and industry, and also reinforcing each other in the sense of pushing the capability and the relevance for like AI to me is pushing the capability of 5G, and also 5G is adding a lot to AI. So maybe you can send us your comments regarding that title, whether you really think that 5G and AI are really going side by side and they are the two faces of one gold coin. Well, as a matter of fact, next please, Joe. Next, let's go to the next slide. As a matter of fact, tomorrow, August the 6th in Shanghai, Huawei has a summit. We call it 5G equal 5 great opportunities for 5 domains, if you will. And I just knew that, so I thought it's good to share it with you all. What is it that we will say tomorrow? And then you will see it in the news. The 5 domains that 5G will influence, I guess we think they are for sure. Number one, as you all know, it's a connectivity. That's the main one that 5G will really influence. And the second one would be cloud computing. So distributed cloud computing everywhere in every node. That's what 5G will influence. Number 3 is the universal cloud, of course, cloud and specifically on the edge side. And also we have to talk about different industry applications. So connectivity, AI, universal cloud, distributed computing, and also different industry applications. Those are the 5 domains. So stay tuned for that, and then you will know more. And I will try today to focus on 5G and AI and how these two create different opportunity. So this slide that's in front of you, it really tells you that 5G, we all know it's a transformative platform. Some people will even go to say it's a general purpose platform. Basically, it's a new capability. That's precisely how we can think about it. And for sure, this new capability, it influences or it goes into 3 directions. And I call it the 3 new values of 5G that really influence or add a lot of breakthrough benefits to everybody, which is basically efficiency. For the network itself, efficiency, productivity is part of it as well. Performance, experience, if you will. And the third one is business, different business, like for example, fixed wireless access, different domains, indoor business, private network. This is beyond the business, beyond performance, maybe in capacity and power consumption and all of that thing, beyond the efficiency by kind of automation and that what we will talk about in that webinar. Basically, those 3, I guess, they unite those 3 capability or new values to give us any possibilities in any ecosystem. If we open that to open APIs and we have developers that develop all of those applications to different industry, then you will have differently, basically an open ecosystem that will really influence everyone. And that has been really clear for everybody during the pandemic. And when we saw that ICT is really at the center of the stage of everything that's happening, even in the economy, you will see here, for example, in the United States, NASDAQ is really leading and carrying the flag for restoring the economy in the United States and technology stocks and stuff. So we all know that this is the time for connectivity and artificial intelligence for any possibilities for all industries. Next, please. All right, so let's start. Before I get to that slide, this is how I summarize the benefit, how AI is going to benefit 5G. 2 things. I guess the first one would be that AI will influence the efficiency of 5G as a technology itself. And that's what I think we will focus a little bit today, myself and the dear great panelists that we have. This is the first one. But the second one, which is really, we cannot really leave it aside, which is how the AI and putting intelligence on the edge will affect and influence the services of 5G. So, so we all talk about the smart edge and how when we deploy the intelligence in there, we can come up with a lot of great services. And no matter whether it's experience attributes like delay or speed or whatever, slicing and all of those great things, these are fundamentally important. So out of these two aspects, when AI affects and we implement the AI intelligence in the cloud or on the local or at the edge, that will make us or bring a lot of more money, bring more revenue. When we put AI in the 5G itself and enhance the technology of AI, I guess the benefit is going to be lowering the cost. So think about the revenue and the cost. The AI will enhance the revenue of all the networks deployed, using 5G, and also it will decrease the cost or lower the cost. So kind of benefiting over there. Here's an example in front of you of 5G is really big and broad, but it can also be a burden if you do not really tackle those issues. Things like a lot of efficiency. So efficiency is just one term, but think about there is the spectrum efficiency, operational efficiency, resource utilization efficiency. The big one is the energy efficiency. I mean, energy can be like a burden, and whether you will deploy 5G or not, whether the electricity bill at the end of every month, deployment efficiency, and how fast you get the sites to be deployed, and of course the integration efficiency when it comes to getting a cute little 5G base station that can be deployed everywhere. So if you can take care of all of those efficiency, I guess, in different way. We're not going to talk in details about technologically or technically how you do that, but you will reach the high bit cost efficiency. You will reach the green operation for 5G, and of course that will translate to market leadership. Next, Joe. Okay, so a little bit of a kind of a history of how the network is really evolving, over time. And I just took the liberty of putting these dates in there. I'm sure these dates can be different from different people, but it's a kind of a ballpark. It started by all IP network when it's like 15 years ago or something, and then moving forward, and then we added the cloud and cloudification, and then it was all cloud network, and then now we're talking about adding AI there. And when we add AI in Huawei, we call it autonomous driving network. And sometimes this term becomes a little bit confusing because people think, when I talk about it, people think it's like autonomous driving car network, like this is a network for autonomous car. No, we call it autonomous driving network in the sense of just like autonomous driving. It's more like levels, as we will see later. So in a nutshell, so building an automatic closed loop, self-optimized, self-healing, automated intelligent network, certainly that will help the operator in many things. And if we go to the next slide, Joe, we can, next slide, please. Yeah, so when we look at this, we really see kind of the three main pain points for at least mobile network operators. Like these are the issues. Number one issue for sure, how can I fully with highest efficiency utilize my resources in terms of real-time traffic and also quasi real-time traffic as well, and how to get how to get the use out of every single resource. That's the first one. Well, the second one is the high energy consumption, and you will see here, like without using AI, the consumption is really flat no matter how much the traffic is. So basically, because traffic cannot be accurately predicted, an energy consumption cannot be dynamically adjusted. So if we predict it, then we can adjust the traffic consumption. And really, the thing that makes sense to all of us as engineers is the monotonically increasing usage of energy. The more you use the traffic. And of course, the last one, when you do not, or you cannot predict the fault in advance, of course, that will hinder your O&M capability, and that will not make you having a very high O&M efficiency. Next. So this is my last slide. So basically here I wanted to talk about solution. Solution in terms of, I wanted to tell you Huawei thinking when it comes to what does it mean autonomous driving network. And I'm gonna get to it very simple. So basically the first point is we are all at the cusp of fully intelligent, fully connected world. That's we all know that. And everybody's talking about it. But what is the implication of that fully connected world? Huawei, I guess 2 years ago, we released our AI strategy and we said it's a full stack, all scenario AI portfolio. And what that mean is we can implement the AI in different areas or different, I would say, part of the network, no matter whether it's the local, or edge, or on the cloud. So basically, when you do the intelligence everywhere, you can do miracles, not only from the service, as we said earlier, but also in the going to the autonomous driving network itself. So currently, we all know that the OpEx of telecom operator remains high. In 5G era, network becomes even more complex, posing a lot of challenges for O&M, and I actually call that multiplicity factor. Everything is multiplied in the autonomous, in the 5G network, no matter whether it's multiple spectrum band, multiple layers, multiple vendors, multiple O&M, everything is multiple. So with that being said, what we really need to do is to define, while we define 5 levels of autonomous network. Of course, level 0 is all manual. But before saying that, how can we differentiate between those 5 levels? We differentiate between them from 4 or 5 points. For example, execution, awareness, decision making, and also service experience. So those are the 4 things that will affect the 5th one, which is the system complexity. So given those 4 things, execution, awareness, decision, and service, we can get to the autonomous network, not all at the same time, but we have to get through step by step. For example, the first level, we call it assisted operational and maintenance. Second will be partial autonomous network. The third level, which we call it conditional autonomous network, then highly autonomous network. Of course, level 5, which is the fully autonomous network, which is everything is autonomous, execution, awareness, decision, and service. Currently, we are trying to get from partial to conditional. And just to give you a flavor on what does it mean conditional, level 3, which is conditional autonomous network, it is the network that has both execution and awareness are done automatically. However, the decision making is partial, service experience is using a human being. So that's all, I guess, about that slide. And as I said here, they have the 3 level. You can implement AI in there to get the benefit. Next slide, Joe. That's my last slide. It's a kind of a summary. As I said earlier, 5G and AI really support each other, bringing benefits in both top line revenue, bottom line, which is the cost. And you can see here it's kind of a moment, the revenue is going up and the cost is going down, and that's will act kind of a gear to bring us more benefits of the network in terms of a powerful 5G network, simple network, intelligent, but more importantly, profitable 5G network. That's all what I have, and we can talk more in the questions and answers. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mohammed. That's very good. We've had 1 or 2 questions coming in. Some of them I will talk to now if they are relevant. Otherwise, we'll pick them up at the end of the presentations. Now we move on to Neil. Please, Neil, if you would like to pick up on your slides.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. So I think Mohammed did a fantastic job talking about how we need AI to help with the operational efficiencies and even the development of 5G technology. And I think there's actually a very symbiotic relationship between 5G and AI, in that AI also needs 5G to actually develop and grow as a technology itself. Machines learn through data, and lots of data. And think about it, we generate about 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day, right? That's a lot. We're all generating tons of data right now sitting here in this webinar. But we can only feed the machine so fast. And we're limited by our infrastructure and computing power. This is actually why one of the big drivers for the acceleration of growth for AI will be 5G. AI needs 5G, not just to take the next step, but to be truly successful and truly advance a lot of the ideas and solutions that we actually want to build. So if you think about it for a second, sorry, can we go back to the previous slide, Joe?
Sorry.
No worries, no worries. Right? If we want to drive that evolution of AI, we need lots of data. Data's floating out there. There's actually lots of stuff that's being generated for machine consumption, not human consumption. And a great example of that is actually IoT. So there's about 127 IoT devices that get deployed every second. By the end of this year, we're estimating 31 billion IoT devices around the world. And by 2025, over 2 trillion. That's a lot, right? That's a lot of data to help fuel our AI capabilities. If we go to the next slide. We have a challenge, right? It's great that we can funnel all this information, but we're going to see an explosion of AI solutions. We've already got some challenges in trying to manage the networks, but if we have all these devices out there, we have autonomous vehicles, right? We've already heard from Mohammed, how are we going to, try and make sure that we operational things efficiently? This is where AI can actually help 5G. So, Mohammed shared some really good examples how we can tap into AI for that very reason. But think about all the things that are going to wind up happening, right? The network connection, more people streaming video, more heart monitors, more transmission. I can tell you that in healthcare right now, one of the big things they're looking for is they would like patients to wear some sensors that relay real-time information, especially the high-risk ones, so that if something were to happen, there's more immediate notice for the doctors and nurses. Maybe we can do some things virtually as they're on their way to the hospital. But there's a lot of things that we'd like to do that's going to put even more pressure on our infrastructure to make happen. So, that's just one example out there. And so to try and manage all these things and try and manage 2 trillion IoT devices alone, that's probably more than we can do as humans. And so we very much will need AI to help us accomplish this. So this is things like load balancing, forecasting usage and bandwidth. It can even be things like trying to figure out where should we actually build cell towers or other substations before the demand is even there. And factor in seasonality, cyclical. We're getting to the point now where there might be a really popular TV show where you're going to get 500 million people tuning into it. We have to know how to actually support that. So there's so many moving pieces out there, so much complexity to this, that we have to tap into AI technology to now help fuel the development and growth of 5G. If we go to the next slide. And this is really where the symbiotic relationship actually comes full bear. AI is a bit limited in the way how it can grow, how fast it can grow without 5G. And we can only utilize 5G efficiently and get the most value out of it is we can help get management from AI on that side. Because if you were to take a look at the roadmap of even what cities and government agencies would like to do, there's a lot. There's a lot about looking at automation of even trash or garbage pickup, about actually using robots to run some of these routes to actually even identify trash in the streets. If you've ever been to Nairobi, Kenya, that's actually garbage in the streets is actually a huge problem. And the ability to actually be able to pick that up would be phenomenal. they would love to do it. They've done some pilots, but there's not enough bandwidth, not enough like 5G access to make that work at an efficient scale. Similarly, you think about recycling, trash, like that stuff. But when you throw stuff away, is it compostable? Is it recyclable? Does it go to a landfill? Right? We're all trying to figure out what's the right thing to do. There's already technology out there where they have smart trash bins, where when you throw something away, it can identify what it is, sort it, and then put it into the right pile. But again, you need a lot of throughput for that. The AI has to learn. There's so much variability in the objects that you need both the development of 5G and AI to actually make that successful. Right? I talked a little about healthcare, financial services, entertainment, legal services, education. It runs the full spectrum here of what the needs are and the potential we can tap into. And that's why I see the symbiosis between 5G and AI. They both actually will feed each other. And that's the huge opportunity that we actually have right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Very interesting. Thank you. Just a reminder for everybody to please use the Q&A for any questions that we will come to at the end of this first session. So now, Will, if you'd like to present your slides, please.
Sure. Got one slide with a few transitions here. So before I get started, as an analyst, I spent a lot of time with infrastructure providers, service providers, carriers, and operators globally. There's a lot of whitewashing around AI. And so what I wanted to do is take a little different tack than my fellow panelists and focus on kind of where I believe 6 kind of buckets exist with respect to the practical impact of AI on networking. So Joe, we can move to the first. It's the notion around smart automation. And this is the whole notion around removing human error for the more mundane tasks, realizing that goal of zero touch for device configuration, provisioning, management, and orchestration. And I think both Mohammed and Neil sort of alluded to this, that there's a lot of complexity with these new networks, and 5G brings a lot of advantages. It's inherently more virtualized than LTE. You can network slice a guaranteed quality of service, and that introduces a whole host of complexity. So that's one of the areas that I think AI will have a dramatic impact. The second, if you'll move to that, is what I call predictive remediation. And this is a whole notion of figuring out an issue before it actually happens, right? So, it's too late, when something happens and it brings down the network. We've seen that with operators around the world. And so the whole notion is, using, all of this data, being able to analyze that data and be able to decision on it and actually correct issues before they happen. And we are getting there with the help of AI. The third bucket is what I call intent-driven outcomes. And Mohammed spoke to this, if you'll move to the next bullet, Joe. This is the whole notion around intent-based networking. And it's all about delivering business intent and turning that into action. And AI can help, from an assurance perspective, that what actually a network operator intends to support actually happens, and the network matches those resources. So can we move to the next bullet? Okay, we'll go to the fourth since we had a little lag there. Enhanced user experiences. I think this is super important. Many infrastructure providers around the world, whether they're focused on the enterprise or service provider, they're focused on CX. And that's the whole notion of bringing a lifecycle approach to bear. And it sort of falls hand in hand with intent-driven outcomes. But from my perspective, AI can reduce the number of irrelevant choices for users, present those choices that are going to be most optimal, and potentially that can drive improvement in monetization of service provider services. So, 5G is great. It's going to deliver killer low latency and very high throughput. It's going to unlock a number of transformative use cases. But at the end of the day, it's about, in my mind, the experience and how relevant that experience will be tied to the service. The fifth bucket and Mohammed touched on this, there are obvious OpEx and CapEx savings within the enterprise. So there's lots of talk these days about private networking, and I think we'll get into that a little further in the Q&A. But certainly the obvious things are, from an OpEx perspective, if you implement AI and you begin to automate these networks, you can greatly reduce the number of people that are involved, and the intelligence and the accuracy increases. And from my perspective, with CapEx, there's this whole notion around software-defined networking, and all of the major infrastructure providers are embracing this these days. And AI will be able to extend, in my mind, that investment protection in hardware. So if you're deploying at the core of a network or within the radio access part of the network, you'll be able to get more utility out of that core infrastructure and that RAN infrastructure than ever before. Certainly much more than we ever saw, within the world of LTE. And then the fifth bucket, I believe AI is going to improve and accelerate digital transformation. And I think this has been another buzzword, and I think a lot of even very large organizations have a hard time getting their hands wrapped around that, and what does that really mean for them. But I think there is one positive aspect of what's resulted with COVID, and it's the need to be able to scale networks, to be able to support work from home, and to support very important things like contact tracing to ensure the safety of people, monitoring density within buildings and that sort of thing, and also bringing new capabilities to healthcare providers as they fight the good fight with COVID-19. And so, and I also believe that the other impacts are, it's going to allow your DevOps and your SecOps to work more efficiently, realize ROI faster, given the tremendous investment. And in fact, there are operators that are also deploying AI in this realm. China Unicom, one of the largest operators in the world, they're actually utilizing AI today for the lifecycle management of their 5G network. So this is planning, deployment, and operation, and optimization. And so there are lots of real-world examples of how AI is making a significant impact on networking. And with that, Joe, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Will. So I think we've had 3 very good presentations there. So we're going to now move to the panel discussion and the Q&A. So I've seen that we've had a few Q&A questions coming in over the chat. So please do ask your questions through the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. So one that came in, which is probably quite relevant to yourself, Will, and also to Mohammed, is regarding the AI and machine learning is conservative by definition. So if you think about the collective databases for inferring, the different models of validation and testing, what happens though if you get what Alex in this question is asking about, a black swan, a one-off incident that is unlikely to be repeated? How does that impact, and how can AI benefit from that type of activity, or that type of data? Maybe Mohammed, you could pick up first. So you have to unmute first, Mo.
All right, so I'm sorry, Joe. So the question is about if the amount of data is not really enough or is not honest to take a decision. Is that what the question is?
Yes, if you get something that's very, like a real outline of data, an incident, how would AI react?
Yeah. So let's go a little bit higher than that and talk about mobile networks, because this is what we were talking about today. So the mobile network by nature is distributed in architecture, right? So in effect, that will make it really wonderful in terms of application of AI. And when we look at the established system feedback, we have we have accumulated nearly 30 years of historic data and experience from mobile network. And that provide us with very strong base for AI and the machine learning as well. So even if we get an outlier or something, I guess that can be taken care of. I'm not an algorithm guy when it comes to machine learning, but what I'm trying to say is giving the past history and our understanding of mobile network, and also giving the pool of data that we have, and then we can easily can blend in or can take care of this outlier if we want to get really an honest decision or a true decision for that specific issue. And Neil can add to it. I guess that's my take on that question.
I think that's good. I'll add a little bit to what Mohammed is saying. So if you're talking about a true black swan event, the honest truth is most AI systems aren't really equipped to handle that. AI learns from data, and that's how it wires its neural network and develops its algorithms. But if there's something that's just totally out there, 1 in a billion chance, it's probably not familiar with it. However, there's always a however. There's a whole, the field of generative design is being tapped in for AI now. And essentially what's happening here with generative design and AI is you don't necessarily give the specifications to the AI system anymore, but you tell them how something works. So you might say, I want to build a new plane, for example. And so the plane has to have lift and thrust and these other things, so that now you come in and say, well, I want a new type of plane that can fly 200 people, up to 15,000 miles, low fuel efficiency. But what the AI does is it generates millions upon millions of designs from that. In cases, I've actually seen it fabricate new materials that we've never made before as people. And it'll whittle it down to what it thinks are the 5 to 7 best designs and then hand them off to human engineers. Well, we can actually be taking this beyond manufacturing. You think about the coronavirus, we now realize that if we could teach an AI system enough about the viruses, we could actually use generative design with AI to try and predict what kind of viruses might appear in the future and actually have their genomic structure and actually get a jump on actually developing a vaccine. Could we do something like this for a black swan event with telecom and 5G networks? It's quite possible. I don't think anyone is focused on it at the moment just because of the rarity, and obviously we're still making the transition to 5G. But generally speaking, black swan events are very hard for AI to handle, but generative design might actually be an interesting solution to help us in the future with that.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you. We've had another question, maybe one that we'll consider. So from an international development context, what is the hardest barrier in terms of implementation of AI and connectivity? Where there is infrastructure challenges. So what makes the development context challenging in particular? So what is the hardest part of implementing AI in the network?
Well, from my perspective, and Neil might want to comment on this as well. These new networks, like I mentioned during my presentation, in the 5G world, they're inherently more complex. You have software-defined tools that are driving a lot of this. There's lots of discussion recently around Open RAN, and virtualizing. Not only are you virtualizing the radio access network, but you're bringing a whole host of new infrastructure players together, whereas maybe in the past it was just Huawei providing core radio access and transport, and then operators, they do dual source for supply chain leverage. But now you've potentially multiplied the number of entrants. You've got software only players, you've got hardware plus software appliance, and so it becomes very, very complicated. So from my perspective, it's number one, for operators and service providers, it's like they need a trusted advisor on how to go piece part all this together. Is Open RAN the right thing to do, or do you go traditional? And AI is just another complexity on top of that. I think Neil spoke to, the challenge with AI is that you have to have a huge data lake to accurately train those models. And then last, and smaller operators, they're just not going to have the same access to that as, like the China Unicoms that I mentioned, or the Verizons or AT&Ts in the US's, or the Telefonicas in Europe. They're not going to have that same luxury. So the challenge is, how do they figure out best practices, and who do they turn to? But I don't know, Neil, if you have any other thoughts on that, and Mohammed.
Well, I think you're spot on. Those are some of the big complexities. I mean, there's obviously other ones that people are probably already aware of, and the cost associated with it, and how do you stretch out some of these infrastructure through, I'll say challenging environments, whether it's mountains, forests, politics, wars, and so forth. I remember being at a UN event a couple of years ago, and the ambassador from Afghanistan and I were chatting. He was just mentioning that it's really hard to even maintain our network when it's getting destroyed every other week. So it's hard to think about moving ahead when you can't maintain what you have. So I think there's a lot of local issues around the infrastructure. I think that those are challenges that are going to have to be addressed as well. The other thing is, just because we build it doesn't mean that they're going to come. Do we have the devices that are available to utilize this technology? Do people have the training, the education to do something with it? Is the need really going to be there or not, right? I think we all like to think that yes, but it depends again what part of the world you are in and what's really more important at the current time.
Okay, thank you. I have a question maybe that Mohammed could answer. If we're thinking about the future, what is the most important role do you think AI will play in mobile networks 10 years from now?
Yes, so that's, I'm trying to think what's the most important, because to me, there are a lot of roles that are necessary and fundamental, and you cannot really think that if AI is not used in there, what would be the alternative? There is no other alternative, and I can give you an example of that kind of a scenario. Because remember, when it comes to autonomous driving network, or adding intelligence to different parts of the network, it's all added for certain scenarios, and you cannot do it all at once. So let's say, for example, we can talk about MIMO. Everybody's talking about MIMO and the role of MIMO in 5G, and that can be categorized under having, I would say, very high level of utilization of resources. So for MIMO, if you took in 3G, you have about 10 to 15 types of MIMO in different combinations of parameters of having the MIMO, like horizontal beamforming or vertical beamforming or down tilt, all of those technological terms. But basically you play in the beam. So for 3G, it was about 10. So it can easily manually do that. And when it comes to 4G, it will upgrade it to about 300 different possibilities, and then human capability, maybe they can do it. When it comes to 5G, you have thousands of those. When you get to the thousands of those, you cannot really optimize massive MIMO and utilization of resources for 5G. Then when we did all of our trial and commercial deployment, we found out that when you automatically search for the optimal pattern through machine learning, you basically enhance the cell cluster capacity of more than 14%. So that basically, imagine 15% enhancement in a cluster. That's a lot. We all know that 5G needs to be more efficient. So in a nutshell, I think, and the same thing, we can talk about power consumption. By using AI or machine learning, you can shut down the resources at the time they are not needed. And to me, this is fundamental because of the green operation and reducing the emission and carbon footprint. So to summarize my answer, number one, there are certain things that AI is a mandatory, intelligence is mandatory, automation is fundamental, necessary, closed loop, and there are things that will make it better. I would say the air interface utilization capability, power consumption is really important, and that's from saving the cost. And then we can talk more about adding to the revenue streams and enterprises, and that's another story.
Okay, thank you, Mohammed. Well, there's a lot of discussion these days around, non-public networks, private 4G, private 5G networks, and a number of companies are getting involved in that. Is AI also relevant in that space as well?
That's a great question, Joe, and it absolutely is. I mean, the answer is yes. And there is a lot of discussion around private networking. In the US, CBRS, Citizens Band Radio Service, has sort of what I kind of deem democratized access to licensed spectrum. And so there are auctions that are going on right now as we speak. And for the first time, enterprises, automobile manufacturers, semiconductor manufacturers can actually purchase or lease licensed spectrum and deploy cellular-based private networks within their organizations. And from a private perspective, where that I think is really going to factor in is this whole discussion around Industry 4.0, and it's the whole notion of automating machinery and manufacturing. And there's a lot of machine-to-machine communication going on as well, which is one aspect of artificial intelligence. So definitely, absolutely applicability, from a private standpoint. From a public standpoint, I talked earlier about how inherently 5G is just more efficient. It's more power efficient. It's more spectrally efficient, and it's also going to help guarantee and deliver higher quality of service levels. And if you think about this, this is important. So in a 5G world, I think one of the big consumer offerings will not just be strict 5G access, but if you're a mobile gamer, paying an amount of money so that you have a guaranteed latency for that mobile game responsiveness. And so that's where AI is going to help, because it's going to help, bolster and deliver a higher quality of service. And at the same time, oftentimes, one of the biggest measurements that operators use to track their success is subscriber churn, and how many people they're churning off of their network and other competitors are picking them up. And it's all about quality of service. If I have a consistently bad experience with connectivity, with services that I'm trying to access, I'm likely going to change service providers. And I think in the public kind of operator perspective, AI will really be able to help ensure that higher quality of service.
Okay, great. Thank you, Will. We've had another question around openness, and specifically around Open RAN. Is that relevant, and is AI then also play an important role in that area, or is there a middle ground between what we see today and what the potential of Open RAN will bring in the future? You did mention about a 5G open ecosystem, Mohammed. So is that something you could pick up on?
Sure. As a matter of fact, there's been a lot of buzz around Open RAN very recently, and its future benefits and values and things like that. Well, first, I would like to say from Huawei perspective, we need to understand that Open RAN is just a different radio base station implementation method, and it is definitely not a standard. It is not a new standard whatsoever. And all RAN, no matter 4G, 5G, we all follow 3GPP standard. From Huawei perspective, as a matter of fact, we're always ahead of implementing things that are customer centric, and innovations that really solve the business and industry sustainable issues. For example, right now we all know that one of the issues is power consumption. We all know that one of the issues are like automation, and but at the same time, we also believe in the ultimate future values for Open RAN. No matter whether it's openness, automation, intelligence, virtualization. However, when we do that, we really think about when is the best time to deliver these kind of values. today, as a matter of fact, by Huawei Single RAN, we can offer, as I mentioned in my solution, we can offer really great intelligence, which we call it MBB AI engine. And that's from 3 different layers, even from the network element, from the local, edge, and also cloud. That can be provided automation and intelligence. So the notion that Open RAN is taken, is politicized, and some people even they go further and think that Open RAN is just a Huawei alternative. This is just wrong. I guess we need to really believe, first of all, in what is the operator pain point right now, what we believe in the ultimate future values of Open RAN. We know that it is not mature at the moment, and it will not solve any 5G problem right now. And with the current legacy base station architecture, we can provide open ecosystem, and we can provide intelligence and automation. So this is what I have regarding Open RAN.
Okay, thank you. So we think we're coming up almost to the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everybody for their questions and their participation. I've got one quick closing question for the panel, which hopefully will be a one-liner. So, of all the advantages that you think AI will bring to mobile networks, what would you say at the moment is the most important benefit that we'll see from artificial intelligence in the next year? Mo, maybe you want to start?
For me, okay. The AI, the most important role in AI right now, I would say in removing the complexity and adding simplicity for in the 5G network, and making it more efficient and easier for operator to adopt and to be deployed.
Thanks. Neil?
I'd actually say enhancing service reliability. We're going to be automating so many things, and entrusting potentially our lives. You think about a hospital surgery going on with some robot surgeons, to riding around in self-driving cars, even to a smart toilet. Disruption of service takes on a whole new meaning. So I really think service reliability, improving that's going to be the most important thing.
Thank you. Will?
Well, I'm going to dovetail on Neil, so I'm going to take it to another level. And when I talked about the 6 buckets, I talked about improving customer experience. And so, Neil is talking about that service delivery, but I believe the biggest impact will be on that customer experience. And we will have to get over a hump, I believe, with some consumers that are concerned about, will AI, eliminate jobs and that sort of thing. But I think as it's implemented more and more, users on mobile networks will begin to realize that the benefits far outweigh any sort of negatives with respect to better predictability, reliability, scalability of service offering. I have to remember when Disney Plus launched, the streaming service in the US, they weren't ready for it. It didn't scale properly. And a lot of that was tied to their content network. In the future, applying AI will eliminate that. And so people will have the experience that they expect and continue to subscribe to those services. So that's my standpoint.
Okay, thank you. Just finally, does anybody have a question for me? Okay, nothing. Very good. Okay, right then. So we're coming to the end. So I understand that this has been recorded and will be available through the RCR Wireless website very shortly. So you can go back and that will also be promoted over social media. So I'd like to thank all the participants and all the who dialed in. Thank you very much for your patience and listening and providing some questions. I'd like to thank the panelists who've done a great job today, and Huawei, of course, and RCR Wireless. So thank you, everybody, and we look forward to the next one in a few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.